Hi, I'm Will Johnson, also known as Power Nerd Insights. I work as a Senior Power Platform Specialist for Vantage 365, and I'd like to welcome you to this Power Nerd presentation. Welcome everyone to this week's Friday learning session. My name is Will Johnson, also known as Power Nerd Insights. I have been a Senior Power Platform developer for close enough to 4 years now. I'm currently working for a company called Vantage 365. And I host these learning sessions as a way to pass on a bit of knowledge, give everybody the opportunity to learn. And we're actually starting a new series this week. So this will be the first session in the My First series. This series is going to look at your first interactions with the tools that are within the Power Platform. They're going to look at how you navigate around the interface, some of the common kind of actions you're going to take in these platforms, and then how we go from knowing pretty much nothing into being able to produce something that makes processes just a little bit easier, or maybe create an application or automate things. So this session is going to be the first in the My First series, which is the Canvas app one. Very, very good one. I do like starting with Canvas apps. There's a lot you could do with them. So in this session, we are going to cover essentially what the interface looks like, what the common pitfalls are in terms of when you're first starting with Canvas apps, what the common properties are, controls, and how the interface works, and how you go from really just first landing in the Canvas App Studio to actually producing something. So this is going to be a very technical session. But before we jump into actually showing you around the Canvas App Studio, what I do want to start with is a bit of a ground rule. So these sessions are all about learning. And I am a firm believer in that there is no such thing as a stupid question. So if you have a question, please do ask it. If you have a question during the session, you will be able to post that in the chat. And we'll get to it when we get to the discussion session at the end. Or you can wait for the discussion section at the end, and then you can ask it then. But if you do have a question, please do ask it. The likelihood is that if you're thinking it, someone else is also thinking it. And we've all started from not knowing much. So ask, it's the best way to learn. That being said, we are going to launch straight into the My First series, and like I said, starting with Canvas apps. So you've started with Canvas apps. You've managed to navigate yourself to make.powerapps.com. You've had a bit of a poke around, and you've decided, hey, I'm going to try and create just an app. And you get greeted with this page here, the very first kind of opening piece of a Canvas app, and you're not quite sure what to do. Obviously, Power App Studio gives you a little bit of a hint around creating a form or a gallery. We're going to get to see those in a little bit in terms of the common controls, but probably one of the first things you want to know is, what is all this on the screen? What's it used for? What are the sections, and how do I navigate around it? So for now, I'm going to hit skip on that, but we're going to go through the interface, what it looks like, what the specific sections of the interface are, what they're designed for, and what kind of you're going to be doing within them. So we're going to start off with the big one in the very center, this bit with all the dots. This is called the canvas, hence the term Canvas app. This is essentially what your app is going to look like as you build it. This represents kind of a collection of what someone would see on screen. You can see here that the app has already added a few things in there in terms of when I hover over. This is essentially a visual representation of what your app's going to look like. And as you add things to it, you'll see them appear in here. You'll be able to click on them, move them around, position them, do what you need to do. But that is the main area where you will see what you're trying to build. And it takes up quite a large amount of the screen. You do have the option to kind of zoom in and out to make it either kind of a bit clearer or move it out. But there's not much else to it in terms of that kind of drag and drop kind of access to things. We have sections on the left and right. We're going to cover the section on the left first, because this is actually where you're going to spend some of your time interacting with things in terms of kind of trying to find things and poke around. So on the furthest left, you have a control bar on the left-hand side. The default option that is selected at the top of this control bar is called a tree view. This tree view is what's seen here. It shows you what the parts of your app are. So you can see here, it's already put in a screen for me, which is part of my app. Your apps are built from those screens. You can add multiple of them. Eventually, we'll look at navigating between them. But for now, we're able to select it. We have a few pre-built things in there. These are called containers. These are controls that are used to make responsive apps and to set layout. We'll look at them again when we get to some of the most common controls you'll see when it comes to Canvas apps. But in the tree view, you essentially have the ability to find what the constituent parts of your application are, click on them, and find out where they are in the canvas. So you can see when I clicked on a specific container, it says, hey, it highlights it in the canvas area. We can see that it's there. The other thing, as you look in the tree view, you've got a little 3 dots menu. This is where you can start to reorder things around. So if I've got a header container here, which you can see there, and then move that down, that's going to change how that looks. Obviously, you have the usual options of cut, copy, paste, delete, and a few other things. We'll get to the view code probably in another session. But that's the tree view. There are 2 tabs to this. The one you'll use when you're kind of looking at your first app is screens. You're not really going to do much in terms of components. That looks at component libraries, and we'll look at those in another session. And then you have the option for the new screen button, which very simply, you have the new screen. And if you are building your first app, you'll see there's a load of kind of pre-built screens that are there available. They are in preview at the moment. So just be aware if something in your Canvas app that you're building for the first time is marked as preview, you may not want to use it. This means that they are essentially Microsoft to build something. It's currently in testing, and it might have the opportunity to break. It's not often that it does, but it does have that opportunity there. So a good little tip for you when you're building your first Canvas app is if you see the preview tag, for now, don't use it. And then obviously, as you can see, lots of different ones, calendars and all sorts. So if I click on calendar, we can see that an additional screen's been added. And once I add screen, you'll see that some of these will already pre-add a load of controls. We're actually going to go into some of those controls a little bit later in the session. But the next option we have on this left-hand menu is the insert button. This insert button is something you will come to relatively often. This is where we insert what are known as controls inside of our application. When I say controls, these are essentially parts of your app that you are going to interact with. You're going to put information in. They're going to show things. They're going to give the user the ability to input things, give you the ability to, as you can see, set things out by layout, introduce media such as videos or audio clips, introduce icons and shapes and all sorts of other things. For now, in terms of the insert menu, all you need to know is that this is where you find those parts. So if you're looking for a way to do something in a Canvas app, more than likely it's in the insert button, and it's one of these. It's one of these kind of core components and parts that are here. The next one down. Now, data. This is a massively important part of any Canvas app. When we look at Canvas apps, the majority of the time, what we're looking to do is interactions with data, things like SharePoint lists, or Excel files, or if you're that far forward, maybe Dataverse. But this is where you add that data and the ability to access that data to your application and make it accessible to your Canvas app. You can see here we have a little little add data option, and because I've added that calendar screen, it's already added a data source there, which you can see Office 365 Outlook. But when you hit add data, you'll get a list of all the places you can pick up data from and all the connectors. For now, I'm just going to choose SharePoint. And then you'll see over here, list. And let's go for, classes. And we're also going to add questions and connect there. So if you're looking for a way to get at data that you have within your kind of Microsoft environment, that being things like I said, SharePoint, we can see their Outlook, or other different connectors and places where that data is held, that's how you do it. It's this data tab here. Good tip in terms of if you're planning out an application and you want it to interact with data, a good tip is to essentially look at what data you want to pull in before you start building your app, and then make sure you have these available and then pull them in from the very beginning. Starting with data is a good way to design a good app. Next option down, this is more an information bit. We're going to discuss variables a little bit later, but this is where you can see things that you have stored away for variables. You see that because I've added the calendar thing, there's a load of variables in there. Variables are essentially a way to just store information inside the application, but this is where you can read them all, see them all, create new ones if you need to, and all sorts. And then you have the search option. This allows you to essentially search your application for specific bits of PowerFX code that you might have written, and also search for specific controls that you might have added. So if I look at my tree view, you can see here we've got something called LBL No Events 1 as the name. If I type in here, there we go. We can see that, hey, LBL No Events 1 is on screen 2, and actually there's an icon that's referencing that label that we need to potentially look at. So that search functionality can be really useful for identifying where certain things are and identifying where certain bits of code are. But this left-hand menu obviously changes depending on what you've got selected from this left-hand command bar. But this is where you're going to be looking for very specifically. A lot of the time you're going to be working in the tree view and in the insert menu, and you're going to be selecting controls from that tree view to then work on them. Now, this right-hand menu over here, known as the properties pane, you can see right now I've got screen 2 selected in the tree view, and it's showing me the properties that screen 2 has. You can see here there's two tabs on here. There's display and advanced. Display gives you some of the basic properties. Now, if I click on something like a text label here, you'll see that it changes so that we have, text option there, font options, all sorts of other things. But this is just some of the core properties that you're going to be able to interact with and change. Now, you can see here where I've selected this label. On the canvas area, it's shown me what that label is. And actually, let's say I want to change this. I don't like the fact that it's normal. I want to change it to bold. And just hit that drop down in the properties pane. It's going to change something about that control. So very simply, this properties pane is all about changing something about the thing you have selected. Okay. It will change depending on what kind of control you have selected. So if I have a label, it's going to show a text property. If I select an icon, it's going to show an icon property. All of them have a display option and an advanced option. Now, the advanced option takes you into all the properties that you have available to you for that control. But if you're building your first app, a lot of the time, the display properties are the ones that are relevant and useful to you for deciding what you want things to look like and operate like. Those are the left-hand menus, the right-hand menu, and this canvas area. Now, there is a fourth section, this bit up at the top here. This is, if you've worked with Excel, same name as that. It's a formula bar. This is where you will spend a lot of your time writing out PowerFX functions and kind of PowerFX code to get your controls that you've got on the screen to do something. So you can see here I've currently got an icon selected. On this left-hand side of the formula bar, you've got a properties drop-down, which allows you to see all of the properties that a control has. Now, this is a list of what's in the advanced area, and you can select a property and then decide what you want it to do. Some of the most common properties you'll see in here that aren't in the display section are things like the onSelect property. This property specifically allows you to set what action is going to be taken if you press on something. So right now I've got this icon selected. If I change this false, which means it's not doing anything, to a very common function called notify, which you can see shows a banner, and just type something in, that's going to change what this kind of control is doing. Now, if I press the play button here, so this is a preview app button, part of the formula bar area. Of course. There we are. Press that. You can see that it's changed the behavior of the control itself by changing that formula bar. Now, in a previous teaching session, one of the things I recommended in terms of a tip and trick when you're trying to get used to Canvas apps is get comfortable with using the formula bar. There's a lot you can do in there, and it's very helpful. That's why I'm calling this kind of section out. The formula bar can be massively helpful for finding out what properties something has very quickly and easily, and then messing around with the actual formula function, you can find out what that property does. Again, if you're building your first Canvas app and you're trying to learn about Canvas apps, I'd recommend it. If you do get something wrong, like for instance, this line out is looking to accept a number, you'll get a little red line and it'll say, hey, we're expecting a number here. The formula bar is very forgiving. It will it will provide kind of a bit of feedback. You can see little error code there, and it'll tell you what the issue is. Hey, we're expecting a number. So if I put 1.2, that's now converted to a number. Again, very useful. But that is the main interface of the Canvas app editor. These are the bits that you need to know to kind of start building, start working with things. But we now know how we adjust properties, how we add things, but how do we actually start building something that's meaningful? What are the controls we're going to use? Well, a lot of the time when you are building Canvas apps, you're looking for a kind of setup that is create, read, update, and delete, right? And it's these kind of functionalities in terms of creating an item in a SharePoint list, reading that item, updating it, and then at some point deleting it, right? So there are a set of very common controls that you're going to use to introduce this functionality. And we're actually going to go through those now. So the very first thing we need is the ability to actually see the data and the information that is within the data tab and the data sources we've just added. And this is performed by one control very, very well. And it is called the gallery control. Now, this control is essentially a way of, if I select vertical gallery, for instance, saying, hey, I want to display a load of data in a specific way. So when you add the gallery control, you select a data source, and then it will display data as long as there is data within the actual list. Now, this is where things get fun. We have a fields option over here. So this properties pane, obviously we want to change what's displayed in here. So if I hit fields, you can see, hey, image 1 is sample image. If I just move this up, you can see there, I've got 2 questions. It's displaying my data. It says, hey, what department do you work in and what is your role in that department? If I want to change what information is displayed, then I can go, hey, for subtitle 2, I actually want to display the hint text. So you can see there, that's now changed to say, on this second label, select your department. This gallery control is something that, in at least my experience, I've used in every single Canvas app I have ever created. It allows us to very quickly display a list of data and have people be able to read it, scroll through it, and see what they need to do. Now, the scroll functionality is to some degree built in. So you can see I've just reduced the size by dragging on the canvas bit. But now I can scroll and I can do what I need to do. Now, this is something worth noting. If you hover over certain items, you'll get a little change in your mouse. That normally means that item can be selected. If you've chosen a gallery, you'll see that the onSelect property of this specific icon that I've chosen has a select parent option. Galleries allow us to save specific items away for usage later, and this becomes really useful when we look at our second most common control, and that is a form. So I'm just going to add this gallery in here, and then I'm going to come in here and put in form. Now you can see there we've got, when it looks at the input space, the edit form and the display form. Well, let's say I want to do the second function within that create, read, update, delete setup. If I choose display form and I go questions there, you can see it's added this kind of section down at the bottom. And that's all well and good. It's showing me quite a fair few things, but there's no data in there. I can't read anything. This is where, when we looked at the gallery, at this little next arrow piece, it's just there, that had the icon on it. That select parent comes in useful, because one of the properties of a form is the item. Now, it's not visible within the display area. You can see there we've got data source fields, but there's no item. When we're working with forms, what we need to do is go to item, and then we can go gallery1 dot selected. So gallery1 is the name of the gallery we've added here, that gallery control. And then we can see, hey, gallery1 dot selected, that's the one we want to look at. So now if I preview the app and press on the other one, you'll see that the form beneath it changes. We can see the choice options, the hint text, and a load of other things. So that's all well and good. That form is brilliant for our read functionality. We've got what we needed. We've got our our read kind of functionality with these two. That's all well and good. What about our update functionality? Well, this is where the slightly different form comes in. Right now, this is a display form. If I delete that form, and then I insert the other form that we had available to us, which was our edit form, and then choose questions again, change the item, you'll see that this one looks slightly different. The controls look like they're able to be interacted with within the form. If I hit play, I can now choose, hey, I can choose things. I'm going to set that to 3. I'm going to change it to a single line of text, data type, and a load of other things that are available to us. But that's all well and good. If I were to go back to my SharePoint list, just changing the number here hasn't caused the information in the SharePoint list to update. This is where we get onto one of our other controls that you'll use very often, and that is the button. Now, the button serves a very simple purpose. It is there to be pushed, and when you push it, it does something. Now, bear with me one moment. Scroll down, you can see that button there, hover over it, lets me push something. But I need to define what it is that it's going to be doing. So when you select the button, the default property it chooses from the drop down is the onSelect. And like I said, this is the property that allows you to change the behavior of what happens when you press this thing. When we're working with forms, they actually have a very specific PowerFX function that makes it really easy to get them to kind of update the data that it's referencing. And that is the submit form function. This is something you're going to use very often if you're using submit forms. Now I'm going to choose form 1. Now, if I change, for instance, let's say the hint text. So if we watch this gallery, I've currently got the what role is your department one selected. We could see that the edit form is saying, hey, this thing doesn't have hint text. Type it in there and then hit the button. We can see that the gallery then updates, the form is submitted, and it's updated the data in the SharePoint list to have that hint text in. Well, that's great. We've now got our read and update functionality. But what about our create functionality? Well, very similar to the edit form, when we select a specific form, you can see that it has a default mode property over here, and that is edit. If I were to select new as the default mode, you'll see that everything gets changed out. If I choose set up this as an additional question and call it question number 3 and then hit the button, there we go. I've now added my create functionality. So with 3 controls, we have the ability to read large amounts of data, read specific information about a single piece of data, and also update that data and create data. Very simply, those are kind of the 3 most commonly used controls that you will find. There are other ways of doing things as well in terms of text input boxes, but forms is where most people start kind of working with this. With these 3, you can create, read, and update functionality. But what about the delete functionality that we sometimes need? Well, this is where we start working with the gallery a bit more. So when I select the gallery, if I hit this little pencil icon here, you'll see that it selects the very first item just up here. I can drag things around, move things, do what I need to do. Now, once I've done that, I need to add something in that's going to allow me to remove information from that data source that the gallery is using, this questions table here. If I hit insert, we could insert another button. We could insert an icon. So if I choose icon here, you can see there's a load of icons. Essentially, I just need something that has a onSelect property that's going to allow me to press a button and do something. For the sake of this, I'm going to choose diamond just because it's the one that my mouse is hovering over. But again, we could see when we add the icon, the onSelect property is the default selected. If I wanted to remove a specific item, what I'm looking to use is the remove PowerFX command. Now, I'm going to choose questions here because, and another handy tip, if you are using a new function within PowerFX and you're writing it in the formula bar will actually tell you what properties and what inputs that function is looking for. So you can see here right now I'm at 1 of 5. That's my collection. So that's my data source. If I hit that, it's now going to say, hey, what item do you want to remove? Well, the gallery has a really useful property called this item, which refers to the specific item or row of data that it is displaying. So I can choose this item, close the bracket, and then if I preview the app and hit this lovely diamond icon, we can see that the gallery updates. Everything's gone. I could select that. And there we go. So with 4 simple controls, we've created a create, read, update, and delete functionality, the very core of an application that interacts with data. Now, I mentioned about some of the layout functionality. This is the other thing that you'll see very commonly, especially in new apps that you create, because what now happens is when you create a new app, you are given a set of containers on the screen. But what are containers? They are a way of defining a layout within your kind of app. So this main container here, you'll see that my gallery, my form, and my button are all on top of each other. They're laid out so that they appear kind of vertically. That is because the container that they sit in is a vertical container. What that means is that anytime you add a new control to this container, it's just going to slot it in at the bottom of that container. So I could add in a rectangle for a shape, and you can see that when I now open it up, the rectangle's in there. This is really useful for if you have things like a lot of controls on the screen that you want to be able to scroll down. Containers can allow that. So you can see if I select this main container, there is a vertical overflow option here. Now, if I hit scroll on that and I hit play, we hope it wouldn't automatically adjust, but apparently it does. What that's going to allow me to do is essentially scroll down the container. So you can see here there's a scroll bar. I can scroll down. I can adjust what is available. That gives us a scrollable section on a screen. It makes sure that our content is adjusted in the right way. But alongside that, the kind of sizes of containers are defined by the size that they set or the container that they're in. So at the very top level of this, there's this screen container here, and you have a size property over here. And if I choose this, you'll see that it's set to parent.width. What that means is this overall container is going to be as wide as the app screen is, and it's going to be as high as the app screen is. And if that changes, all the containers inside will resize to basically accommodate that size change. This is what is known as responsive app design. You can take it further with additional containers and a few other things. But the other thing you might see, and I'm going to hope it works today if I choose blank screen, is a screen that has absolutely no containers at all on it. If you choose this option, you have the ability to just drop things on the page and move them wherever you want. Size them however you want. You could have controls on top of each other, overlaid on each other, and a few other things as well. Containers, however, are very, very useful. If you are building an application at any point that may be used on both a mobile phone or on a tablet or on a computer or all three, responsive app design becomes really important. Containers become close enough to essential unless you want to manually kind of write out PowerFX formulas to define what the width is and what certain breakpoints are. But yes. Now, one last thing to note. One of the other controls that's in here, text label. This is essentially what it says on the tin. A lot of these controls are what they say on the tin. So a text label will be a place where you can input text. That could be text that's retrieved from a specific data source, or it could be text that you've written in yourself. So you can see here, this is text. This control is very, very versatile, but there's not much you can do in terms of stylizing. There is one other control that you tend to find along the way as things go, but I feel it's useful to know about now. There is an HTML text label. You can see there. It allows you to use HTML and inline CSS to stylize your text. While that may not be relevant for now, a lot of the time it can be very useful a lot later as you develop your apps further and kind of flesh them out. In terms of, obviously, when you first start with an application, a lot of the first questions you end up having is, how do I display my data? How do I get things to link together? Well, displaying your data is all about the controls you use. It's all about what you add using this insert menu or the insert menu over here. It's about how you use PowerFX to kind of define what that behavior is between things like icons, things like buttons. And it's about how you kind of search through the properties list and find what you need. We've covered the most common controls. What I want to do now is cover some of the most common properties, okay, that you're going to interact with. And we're going to do it via the drop-down formula bar rather than by the display or advanced section. So for now, I'm going to choose the button that I have, and we're going to go through. So I've talked about the onSelect property. There are a few others that are in here that aren't within the properties pane that are useful. Tab index, for instance. Tab index is used to set at what point a control will be selected if someone is navigating your application using only the keyboard, not the mouse. I'm calling it out because it is an accessibility feature to enable your users to be able to actually walk through the app without the need of a mouse. If it is set to 0, then the control will be accessed in terms of, so you can see all my controls are currently set to 0. So if I click here and I hit tab, you can see that because they're all set to 0, my cursor is moving as I hit tab. And then eventually we get to the top, which is skip to main content. and it starts to tab through again. Setting your tab index is useful. If you do not want something to be accessed via the tab index, make sure you set that to false. Now, other one that's in here, it's a simple one, but it's radius bottom left, radius bottom right, radius top left, radius top right. For a long time after I made my first application, I got rather annoyed at the fact that buttons couldn't have rounded corners until I found these properties. So this essentially allows you to change what the corner rounding or the corner radius is on your button. The reason I raised this one, I was building applications with square-sided buttons that didn't look pleasant for close enough to 3 months before I found this. So it's a useful property to have. It's not one that is available in the actual display area. The only thing you'll get is border radius, which sets all of them at the same time rather than each individual one. So if you want to round a specific individual corner, use the formula bar drop down. You'll get more in there. And then the visible property. Now this is a really important one. When you add a control to a screen, by default, the visibility is going to be set to true. The application is going to assume that you want that thing to be able to be seen. In some cases, we do always want it to be seen. In some other cases, it might be conditional based upon whether certain things are filled in or not. This is where the visibility comes in. So you can adjust this based upon one of the most common used functions within PowerFX, a simple if statement. So I'm going to say, hey, if the gallery1.selected.question number does not equal 2. It'd be helpful if I could type that properly. Then I want this to be false. Elsewise, I want it to be true. So I only want this button visible if the gallery1.selected question number is equal to 2. Now, right now, my question number equals 3. The button's not there. I don't have a question that's numbered 2, so the button's still not there. But we can still access it even if it's not visible by, again, coming to the tree view, hitting the button and saying, hey, actually, if it's 3, I want it to be shown. And there we go. It appears again. There's another property in the drop-down that is similar to this, but works slightly differently. And it's called display mode. Now you'll see in here, display mode.edit. There are 3 different display modes. There is display mode.view, display mode.edit, and display mode.disabled. Display mode.view means that you can still see the thing, but it's not able to be pressed on, it's not able to be interacted with. Display mode.disabled means that the control is disabled. So if I change this, for instance, for this button to display mode, I'm going to, for the moment, just quickly change the visibility for this to true and delete out that gallery and the form. So if I go into the display mode property just over here and go display mode.disabled, you'll see that the button becomes gray. Things don't work. It's not able to be used. It's not able to be interacted with. If I preview the app and I hover over it, I don't have the mouse change or anything. It just looks like it's not working. If I change that display mode to view, I can hover over it. It's blue. There's no mouse change. It looks like it's active, but it's actually not. And then display mode.edit, which is the default, makes it interactable again. The reason why I'm calling out this property is in some cases, like for instance with the form, we may have mandatory fields on there, or we may have certain conditions that we need met before someone's allowed to press something. For instance, I am going to say, in this case, if, let's say, parent dot drop shadow equals, I'm pretty sure it's light, then display mode dot edit else display mode dot disabled. So again, using that if statement, I can turn around and say, hey, does something in this app equal this thing? If it does, change it. Now, right now, the drop shadow on this is set to drop shadow.light, so it doesn't equal the light text. But if I put in drop shadow.light, hey, my button's now able to be used. This can be used for checking things like whether a specific control that you've added to the screen is blank, or whether certain items, a certain item from the gallery has been selected or not. Very, very useful property to know. Now, the tips and tricks bit. The biggest tip I can give when it comes to creating your first Canvas app is do not be afraid to get it wrong. The app will tell you if something isn't able to be done. It'll provide a little error marker. You also have Flow Checker, this app checker icon up here. If you click here, it's going to tell you, hey, you've got accessibility issues. You've got formula issues. Now, formula issues are where things don't work. You've got kind of unused data sources in your app that you might want to check up. This app checker could be really useful because it'll tell you what's wrong. And sometimes it might tell you how to fix it. And if it doesn't, hey, you can always use Google. But alongside that, getting things wrong is how you can learn best. Playing around with the properties that are available to you in the controls is the best way to learn. Another tip is, as I said, get used to and comfortable with using the formula bar. You can expand it out. You can make it bigger. There are extensions out there that allow you to pin it to the right-hand side, so it sits along the properties pane, so you get more space for it. But really have a play, have a mess around, see how it works. Third big tip I would give, rename your controls. So you can see here I've got label 1, HTML text 1. If I start adding in extra HTML text labels or labels, it's going to become really confusing as to what each control is doing, how it's working. Decide on a naming convention and stick with it. So me personally, if I'm looking at a title label, you can see this is a label control. I'm going to call this LBL title. Let's say this is screen 1, so S1, right? That means now I know just by looking in the tree view, I can see this is a label control. It's currently got the title content in there. It's on screen 1. Makes it so much easier to maintain and manage things later. And the very last big tip I can give is if you build something that in PowerFX that's really complex, you do have the ability in the formula bar to add comments. So using double slashes, this is a comment explaining my PowerFX. Leave these notes for yourself. If you're working with Canvas apps regularly, more than likely you're going to potentially be running multiple builds at the same time, and you might write something one day, and I do it, and come back the next and go, how does that work? Why does it work? This gives you the ability to do it. Comments are really, really useful. But that is my first Canvas app kind of point. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments.